Hello, friends. I'm Maggie Ostara. I'm a human design expert and a sovereignty mentor for awakening women in the Aquarian age. And I'm back with another video in our series of videos about the human design profiles. The profiles are like your character. And so they're really a core part of your human design. And so this series of videos is both talking about kind of the profiles in general, giving you an understanding of that. And then also we're going through each of the individual lines of the profile. And today's video, we're going to talk about the second line, which is known as the Hermit in traditional human design or the Responder in quantum human design. So let's go ahead and find out about our dear Hermits. So let's remember that the lines of the profile are divided into two general categories. Lines 1, 2, and 3 are more about the self. They're considered personal lines of the profile. And then lines 4, 5, and 6 are more transpersonal. They have more to do with relationships and kind of connecting with the outer world. So the second line profile, the Hermit, is very, very much about the self. In fact, the number one superpower of the Hermit is the self-referential nature of the Hermit. The Hermit enjoys her own company. She doesn't get bored. She usually has a lot of projects. She enjoys kind of exploring her inner world. She doesn't really need to look outside so much for so much input. Doesn't mean she doesn't like to learn or she doesn't like to study, but it means that she does reference her own self more, and she's really pretty good at tuning into what is her inner wisdom. What is it that is coming from the inside of her that is helping to guide her in her life? So second lines are often really drawn to human design because human design is a wonderful tool and ally to help us get to know ourselves better. And hermits are often very interested in getting to know ourselves better, particularly if we're any generator type. We're going to be really interested in getting to know ourselves. And so the second line can have an advantage in terms of kind of their spiritual connection and also their spiritual growth because they're more comfortable a lot of times being with themselves and going inside. They can really benefit from somatic practices that help them to know what they're feeling on the inside, what their emotions are, what their feeling state is, what their sensations are, just kind of all of the different things that are going on inside. And this can really help the second line to embody, because the more that we understand what's going on inside of us, the more we're embodied. It's actually a powerful path to embodiment is to really do those kind of somatic and neurosomatic practices that help us to understand what's going on inside of ourselves. And you can see, in a world that is constantly trying to tell us to look outside, pay attention to this, pay attention to that, right? The second line really has the superpower of saying, I'm going to really look inside. I'm going to pay attention to my own advice. I'm going to pay attention to my own inner guidance, and I'm going to spend some of my time really cultivating that superpower inside myself. Second lines can be super creative. They can have very vivid imaginations. They can be highly intuitive as well, because if you do turn inside more, you spend more time with yourself and don't pay as much attention to what's coming at you from the outer world, you kind of have more space inside to be able to hear the messages that are coming through your body, through intuition or through your creative practice. So second lines can enjoy things like cooking or painting or any kind of crafty thing or any kind of creative project where they can really use that deep focus that they have to be able to go in and allow the creativity to come through, because creativity is not a linear process, right? It's a deep process that is very associative, where things kind of come through as you dive into it. And so the hermit's ability to be on their own and really focus in fosters their ability to be more creative and to have that intuition really flowing in. I really think of creativity as an aspect of intuition. And just know, because that second line really likes her projects and she really likes her own company and she likes her focus, She does not like to be interrupted. I'm a second line and I do not like to be interrupted when I'm engaging with something. I really don't. It's like there's this deep like feeling of disrespect when it comes my way. So if you are a second line, notice that for yourself, because you don't want to flame people just because they interrupt you. But if you have a second line in your life, you also want to honor her need for being able to, really focus on what she's doing and not be interrupted, unnecessarily. And second lines can also be more intellectual or more logical, depending on, her own tendencies, what else is going on in her human design, and also what her family of origin was like, and, her first communities were like. What did they prioritize? What did they value? And if you were in in a family, in a community like the one I grew up in, which was highly intellectual and academic, that's how I started out. And then intuition and creativity came in later when I was able to unravel some of that left brain dominance that I developed in my family of origin. So if you're a second line, you can kind of take a look at that for yourself and see if you've gotten that left brain dominance, and maybe engage with, somatic practices. Different things can help you open up your intuition and play around with your creativity, because you may find that there is a whole world that will open up for you when you do. When it comes to growing your inner sovereignty, again, second lines do really well in general with this, because they are more in tune with what's going on inside of them, and they are more self-referential, meaning that they do, pay attention to their own perspective and how they feel. Sometimes they get conditioned away from that, but when they are really encouraged to be more of who they are, then they will, really honor that part of themselves. And this is a core part of our inner sovereignty, which is that ability to be able to tune inside. So the hermit's ability not to be so conditioned or so controlled by that cultural programming, right, that tells us who we should be, how we should be, what we should do. The hermit often has a pretty vibrant inner world that buffers her against what's coming that way. And when she's able to grow that inner awareness and live her life more that way, she is in effect growing her inner sovereignty. And in that way, she can become also a model for all of us to say, oh, there is a pathway inside, right? There is a pathway to that inner guidance. And a lot of times it does come through embodiment, right? If we're not in our bodies, if we're kind of dissociated, if we've never even fully incarnated and kind of stayed outside because of the complexity and the tumultuous nature of our world, then, doing those somatic practices really help that second line in growing their sovereignty, so that they can become more embodied and not so mentally focused, right? Which is one of the challenges that the second line can have. Just like with the first line, when they become overly intellectual, this can kind of pop them out of their bodies and inhibit their ability to have access to all of their faculties, which include their intuition and their creativity. But the second line has a good ability to do that, because, like I said, her self-referential nature does tend to lead her back inside, which is also why human design is often appealing for the second line, because human design always sends us back inside, right? That's what our strategy and our authority is all about. And then the profiles live through that strategy and authority as well. For the second line woman at midlife, sometimes realizing that she's a hermit can be a huge relief. Let's remember that at midlife, hormones change for women as they go into the menopausal period, and their priorities change. Many times we start to feel not as compelled to take care of others, right? The hormones that we have when we're premenopausal and in our real childbearing years, right, tend to foster us to be focusing on others and caring for others. And as those hormones change, it can actually be a big relief for the midlife woman to be like, you know what? Hey, I'm starting to feel like I want to give some more attention to myself. I actually have some more energy for that. I'm not feeling quite so compelled to make sure that my partner is okay, or my kids are okay, or my siblings or my parents or whoever it is. She can start to feel a little more authorized in her own self to say, you know what, what do I want? What are my needs, right? And to factor herself into her choices. In fact, the second line woman at midlife, right, might find that the empowerment that comes from really tuning with inward is just so beneficial for her. Let's remember that Virginia Woolf wrote a book called A Room of Her Own, right? And so the midlife woman might be really like, I'm going to embrace my inner hermit. I'm going to create a room of my own, even if it's more a room inside of her own psyche, right? Where I get to explore my inner being. I get to find out more about who I am. And I get to make myself and my own needs, my own desires, more of my own priority. I'm going to get to know myself better. This is something that often happens for women around that midlife period. Our second lines do have 3 different nemesis. Okay, so let's go through those one at a time. Let's remember all of the archetypes in human design. There's over 125 of them. Do have, you could think of them in nemesis. I like saying we have superpowers and nemesis, right? Because it's kind of fun. But just to say that we have things where we can kind of be down in that disempowered expression or the shadow expression where we're also using our power to try to manipulate things, right? We can fall into those expressions, and those tend to be our nemesis. So for the second line, the first nemesis that they have is a resistance to giving themselves their own attention, their resistance to being on their own, their resistance to having a room of their own, right? And so this can be really fostered by our overculture, and a lot of times in our families, especially for women, where we're told that our role is to take care of other people, right? It's to focus outside and make sure everybody else is okay. And if you received that kind of conditioning, I mean, we all get it through culture, but if you received it through your family and your first communities, right, that could be leading you away from embracing your hermit nature. Because you might be like, yeah, but is that okay? Am I being selfish, right? They might think that self-referential nature is selfish and that that's not how they should be operating. So this is a cultural dictate. It's not truth. It's just a cultural dictate, right? So this is part of what we're unraveling. But it can be hard for the hermit if it feels like they're going against what they've been taught how they should show up. We actually had a woman in our Sovereign Sisterhood recently when we were working with the profiles where she said she felt this guilt and that she had people in her life who were kind of guilting her, calling her selfish by wanting to give herself the gift of her own attention. Fortunately, human design is like, liberate yourself from that. You're a hermit. You're designed to spend some time on your own and to get to know who you are on the inside. So nemesis number 2 for our hermits is that they can overly hermit. They can become isolated. They could spend too much time on their own, and just being on their own can become a habit, right? It becomes their sense of normal. And then that's just what they do by default, right? And the thing is if it comes extreme, you can become antisocial. The real extreme is agoraphobia. You don't even want to leave the house, right? So second lines who I've talked to shared about this. It's like, do you ever feel like you just like don't want to go leave the house, right? So you want to watch out for that, right? You still want to feel like you can engage with life. You can have friends. You can go out. You can, do, social activities. You can enjoy yourself with other people. And so I know some of the hermits that I talked to during the pandemic, right? We were pretty happy during the pandemic. Hermits were like, spend time at home? Sure, not a problem. But then we have to come out, right? Because we spend so much time alone. So you want to watch out for that for yourself. And just see, do you get stuck in the house, right? Do you say no because you're used to not going out? Do you choose not to pay attention to things that maybe earlier in your life or at other times you paid attention because you've gotten kind of stuck in your house? So you got to watch out for that one. Fortunately, we have the responder to the rescue. So in quantum human design, the hermit has been renamed the responder. So what this comes from is in the lore of human design, there is this idea that the hermit, if they've been hermiting for too long, their friends start to notice and they start to say, hey, Maggie, we haven't seen you for a while. Come on out and play. Come on, let's go have dinner. Let's go dance. Let's go to the river. Let's go play. Let's go do something fun, right? Because their friends will start to notice and will pull them out. And in that sense, they are responding to other people calling them out, right? It's this idea of being called out as a hermit. So if you have friends who are hermits, make sure you call them out when you haven't seen them for a while, right? Just, send them a message, send them a text, say, come on, let's go do something, get out of the house. It actually can really help, because if they've been hermiting a little bit too long and they've kind of made that their default, having a friend that will do that for them is really beneficial. And another aspect of this is that second lines are always paired with one of the transpersonal lines. So like I'm a 2-4. So the 2 is always with a 4 or a 5 or a 6. So that transpersonal side of their profile also will encourage them to come out more. Will also be like, hey, we've got these different aspects of ourselves. So I know if I start to overly hermit, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I need to dive into my fourth line, which is the opportunist, right? I like to think as the networker, as the person who's out there and engaging in life and seeing what people are doing and connecting people together, right? So that's that other part of your profile, right? Everybody has 2 lines of their profile. That other part of their profile helps to balance that out. So you get to kind of see what that creative tension is inside of you between your second line profile and whatever the other line of your profile is, which is more outer focus, and see how you can have them play together, help each other, support each other, rather than feeling like they're in conflict with each other, because they really don't have to be when we can be flexible. And then the third nemesis for the second line hermit is that they can get trapped in their own thinking. They can get trapped in their own minds. If they start to fall into negativity, if they fall into fear, if they fall into scarcity, they don't have anybody else to kind of be ballast for them and say, hey, wait a minute, let's talk about this for a second, let's see if we can find and, put a different spin on this, right? Like to help them to kind of come out of that negativity. Because if you can see, if the hermit starts hermiting too much, and I did see this happen with people during the pandemic where hermits were like, yeah, I'm fine staying alone. But if they did fall into fear in that environment or in any environment, and, the world is full of stuff right now that's pretty challenging where you could hook onto it and get caught in a fear spiral, right? So this is one of the challenges that hermits can have, because there they are referring to themselves and following their own advice and paying attention to what's going on in the inside. But if they've actually lost their connection or their conscious connection to that deeper inner being who isn't going to fall into negativity, right? But if they've lost that and their fear stories start getting activated for them and they get lost in that, then it can be hard for them because they have to pull themselves out, right? Unless one of their friends calls them out. Another, reminder, call out your second line friends if you haven't seen them for a while. And also check to see if they've, been falling into a negative view of the world, right? Negative view of themselves. Because they need other people to also reflect back to them, right? So that they can be in a dynamic relationship with other people. We all need other people. We all need other people to help us when we fall into, one of those downward spirals. If you are a hermit, make sure that you do honor your own inner awareness, your own inner guidance, your own creativity, your own intuition, right? Honor that aspect of you. Give yourself a room of your own. Give yourself time to yourself. Have your creative projects. Do all that stuff. But notice if it goes on for too long, if you start getting antisocial, if you start being like, I don't know if I want to go out and be with other people, right? Notice if you do that. And notice if that's also connected to a more negative view of yourself or the world, right? And if you've been caught a little bit in that negative spiral. And in that case, you might need to reach out if one of your friends hasn't called you out. And if your friends know human design, you can be like, hey, I need to be called out. I need some positivity in my life. But you can also just, reach out and say, hey, it's time to play. What can we do? So just know that you have incredible superpowers, and the nemesis are something that you can learn to navigate when you know what they are. And you just need to have, a little part of you that's like, hey, we don't want to stay here for too long. We don't want to be caught in our house, right? We want to be able to enjoy the fullness of the world as well. If you're newer to human design, I do have an entire little mini course here on YouTube, and you can go and check out the Start Here playlist, and I will be adding the profiles videos to that playlist as well, but it walks you through type, strategy, authority, and the profiles. So that gives you really like that foundational piece. And then I have a lot more videos that go deeper into authority, deeper into the types and so on. If you really want to get to know better, there's an extensive library that I do have here on YouTube. So I encourage you to go and, go onto my channel and check out the playlist and see, what's going to be the best next step for you. I'll make sure to put that start here playlist here at the very end so that you can dive into that if you want to. And I'll put the profiles out there too so that you can check those out and see more about the other profiles, because it's really good to know about the profiles of your friends also, people who are close to you, because it helps you to understand them better. And like I was saying with the second line, helps you know how to support them better as well, right? Human design is really so much about us being able to understand each other as well as understanding ourselves. And so that's really why I encourage everyone to learn about, the different types and the different authorities, as well as their own, because then we can live in a more human design influence, right, and informed world. And imagine what can happen in our world when we are living all more from inside of ourselves. We're becoming more and more sovereign of ourselves. We're releasing the conditioning and the programming that really told us that how to fit into consumer culture, right? And instead live more genuinely from our hearts, from our own inner being, and from the divine guidance that is always available to us. Also, we're just releasing a fun quiz called What's Your Midlife Awakening Archetype? So this is for women at midlife, and it is partially based in human design, but it's really largely about what's going on for us at that time. And I will put the link for it at the end of the video and down in the description as well. You get a beautiful PDF called Your Sacred Spark. It is a guide to these different archetypes. And then when you get to take the quiz, you find out which yours is, and then you get those results. We create another beautiful PDF for that. And you can kind of lean into that and see how this lands for you. We are here in such a dynamic time on planet Earth. And my feeling is that the awakening of midlife women is really part of this larger awakening that so many of us are going through. So I have been creating more and more content and support for midlife women, and particularly those of you who want to come and study human design and learn more about sovereignty. So I am so delighted that you're here today and that you made it all the way here to the end of the video. I send you many, many blessings and much love. Bye for now.